This is very interactive. Just give a couple minutes of background and context. So about a year ago, I was asked to lead our generative AI working group, task force. I don't think it had an official name at that time. And it really started off as a response to the very rapid adoption of Chat GPT and a way for that to prevent cheating. And so it was a group of academics and people from various offices around campus. And the goal was, how do we make sure that students understand that you can't use this tool in ways that would compromise academic integrity? And so we responded very quickly, and I think very well. We came up with some syllabus statements. We had videos that were ready over the summer for the fall semester, fall 23, that talked about, from a faculty perspective as well as from a student perspective, how to talk about these tools. And we put some resources for the faculty up on the CTE website. Now, one of the things that we quickly noticed was that this is not a tool that would just be used for writing essays in English 104 or doing code for CSE 102. It was something that could have a much broader impact on the university. And therefore, we somewhat transitioned to a more intentional effort that was focused on how can we make sure that we adopt these tools for the betterment of the university, but also to make sure that we understood how we can help our students use these tools to be prepared for the world in which they will go out into, where they will be widely adopted. And so we're looking at several aspects across the university. So first and foremost, infrastructure. And that's the meeting I actually just came from. We're working with EAB to look at our data and how can we have a data infrastructure that would allow the use of some of these tools, because we don't want to just be in a situation where we're reactive, but really want to be proactive and intentional about what is our data, how can we use our data and some of these high performance tools to better run the university. How can we make sure that our employees at the university, whether they be faculty, staff, or anyone else in various functions, properly use them? So workforce development, training people about the ethics of AI, training people about what the underlying tools do and what they mean, and some of their limitations. And so that's one of the things that we're working on as well. Adaptive and responsive teaching. How can we make sure that we're using these tools to provide some of the beneficial aspects of, say, personalized learning and all the benefits that come with that? Again, research. So the Division of Research, led by Henry Fedemiro, is looking at not just how these tools are used in research, but how should they be used in research, and what types of policies or best practices should our faculty be aware of. Other efforts include this group and some of the things that we're doing with this learning community, but also a new program out of the Office of the Provost called the Innovative Teaching Fellows Program. And one aspect of that will be the use of artificial intelligence in teaching. We're also working on a course that we hope to pilot this summer and then offer regularly in the semesters going forward, that would be for our students to better understand these tools and how they can be used, as well as the ability to audit that course by our faculty and staff. So that, again, we're making sure that everyone understands these tools and where they can go and how they can be used. And so with that, that's just a little bit of what we're doing and where we're headed. And I would just be happy to take some questions and have a discussion about where this group sees generative AI going from the university perspective.
Any question, Brent?
Yes. When you say you're looking into some of these courses, a lot of us are starting to try to think about how to incorporate these courses. That sounds like a big, big project there. What exactly is going to be incorporated into this course that you want to give to students? Is this to show them how to use it? Is it something broader? What is this course that you're discussing?
So this course would be a very broad overview of generative AI, talking about the limitations, and I believe it would be a 1 credit course, or we would allow the students to take it for 0 credit. And again, it's a broad overview. What are these tools? How do they work? What are their limitations? And then go into some of the ethics related to using them, some of the risk associated with dumping your data into some of these tools if it's not a private version of one of these large language models. And so again, very introductory, and a goal is just to provide some baseline information for our students so that they have the ability to talk about them and understand how they're used as they go forward. And if they want to get more information, ideally we could target them towards some more deeper opportunities to learn.
This is for all students. This will be kind of a new requirement of sorts.
No. It would not be a requirement, but it would be open to all students. The goal was to offer a couple sections we wanted to do in the spring, but we just were kind of behind the we wanted to do it this spring, but we were just behind the gun a little bit in our ability to get them advertised, because students register in November. And so we weren't, or even earlier, we weren't really ready at the proper time. So that's why we want to pilot in the summer when students could maybe just take it as an extra class, get some feedback on it, and then really put a push out for students to sign up here in the fall.
Awesome. I'll also kind of just get a little bit more context on. I've kind of heard a couple of different versions of A&M's approach to the AI here, and it's either, depending on who I talk to, maybe a first mover or fast follower. I think those are definitely two different things. What exactly is our strategy here overall?
Right. So I would say fast follower. We want to be definitely at the forefront, but not making giant bets on things. I think that places like University of Florida have invested significantly in faculty, and they've made it a requirement that all of their students have certain numbers of AI courses, and that works for them if that's really where they want to go. I think that being a fast follower, looking at what works and what doesn't, is probably a better approach for an institution as large as we are and as diffuse as we are. And so I really like where we're sitting right now. I think we've got some really good plans. I think we've got some really good initiatives that are getting stood up, and I'm excited about where we're going, but we're not going to make giant bets, and that's not what I've been told in the meetings that I attend.
I'm going to chime in.
Mhm.
Michael, if you wanted to give recommendations to faculty of how they should approach AI and teaching it in the classroom, what would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost, I would say look at what type of class you are teaching, and look at what you want students to learn at the end of your course, and how does AI impact that, right? So there are a couple ways. One, AI could impact your ability to assess learning given the things that you've done traditionally, and this is where the academic integrity piece comes in. So if you have projects, assessments, or activities that are easily completed by AI, and it would not be very easy for you to determine whether or not they were completed by AI, that's going to require you to rethink some of those things or rethink the way that you implement them. And so I would say that's the first thing. The other thing is, how can AI enhance your content, whether it be improving the teaching, or is it something that AI is going to be enhanced by in the performance or application of what you teach? So there are certain fields where AI is going to be very instrumental going forward. And so you want to say, look, here's how you can use AI to enhance what we're doing, and that's kind of going to be the future of the way that we operate. So those are the big things. Is it going to impact your ability to assess student learning? Can it improve student learning by making things easier for them, generating prompts, generating customized assessments, generating customized lessons, explaining things well? Or can you incorporate it in such a way where you can say, this is how AI can be a force multiplier for you applying this skill or this knowledge in your profession?
So it would sound like that you anticipate, or the faculty should anticipate, that it's going to be needed when they go out into the workforce.
Very much so. I think that that's probably the area where I'm hoping that our faculty are spending a significant amount of their time as they go through their traditional refresh or updating of their courses. How can we improve this, right? So one of the classes that I historically taught and still do teach is our capstone design. And there's a lot of exciting things going on in generative design and have been for the last several years. And so I can't imagine that if I were kind of in charge and the course coordinator for these courses still, that I wouldn't be working very hard about making sure that there are generative design aspects that we put into our entire design spine throughout the curriculum, making sure students understand how these tools work, what are the limitations of these tools, what are the underlying theories that inform these tools. Because again, when it comes to the application, that's going to be really important. And just to give you a feel for what I'm talking about, so a lot of what engineering is, at least engineers that work in certain aspects will do, is design something. And so a generative design tool can take some constraints. So say I need to support a load between these 2 points, and it needs to have this much strength, and I have these additional constraints on it. Build me something or design something that can do this. And then there are tools that will actually come up with different design solutions for that. And so having students understand that and being able to use those and incorporate those tools into their own projects and their own design activities is going to be very important going forward. And those are the types of skills that we want to make sure that our students have, and those are the types of things that we need to make sure that our students are aware of.
Okay, before I ask you another question, there's a question in the chat that says sometimes zero
Yeah.
credit courses. Did you see that?
Yep, I didn't get a chance to click on it. I was,
Right.
yeah, and you know, I think that we want to give students a lot of different options. And if a student wants to audit a course or do a zero credit and get as much out of it as they deem appropriate, I think that's okay. Maybe some students want to take a credit and have that be transcripted and get a satisfactory for that. That's also fine. It's not something that we're trying to really force on students. It's more of an opportunity that we're trying to make available for them. And so I wouldn't worry too much about attendance and engagement in this initial kind of survey course at this time. Going forward, maybe it becomes something that we think is necessary, and then we rethink whether or not we want to require credit for anyone that takes it. But right now, I think it's really just piloting it and making this information available for as many people as are interested in taking it.
Okay, so back to your comment about preparing the students for their future jobs. So what if the faculty don't really know themselves of what's going to be needed or how to go about that approach? What recommendation do you have for them to get up to speed?
Right. So I would say do some research, play with these tools, think about some of the things that you're aware of that people in your field do, and see if you can craft some prompts or go out and do some research about, can these tools do that? How do these tools perform in those different areas? So I had one colleague who used ChatGPT to write case studies, right? And then come up with solutions for these case studies. And you can see how that's that could be very analogous to doing some planning for a business, right? If you know that you say are setting up a hospitality business of some sort, and you need to understand what are the key things you need to look for, and what are the key aspects that you want to make sure that your business can provide, then you can ask the tool to do that. And those are the types of things that I think students need to understand and look at the limitations of it. So is this something that works well in this particular instance? Is this something that I have to really go in and do some post-processing per se, where I'm looking at what it gave me and saying, okay, that doesn't make sense, and reframing the prompt.
Okay, I see something put out there, teaching and learning with AI, a sharing conference between educational practitioners. Is that the one in Central Florida? Where is that, Tiana?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that is in Orlando.
So Brent and Keegan, I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you don't want to say anything, you don't have to. I know you're both working on implementing AI. So what do you think has been the most difficult?
The most difficult with engaging the students with AI?
Yes.
For me personally, what I've seen is sort of a race to the bottom in trying to use the AI in the most simplistic terms possible. So, for instance, on our reflection journals, they will put the prompt in and say, write me a journal about this. And then whatever it writes, they just copy paste, or they ask very surface level questions. Because as someone who engages with ChatGPT a lot, I think that it's actually a really useful tool for brainstorming and thinking around. And like Dr. Johnson said, for case studies, I run our honors housing community, and we have student leaders that act as peer mentors. I was doing a training and I needed case studies for them to work through in a conflict management training. And so, you know, when I have to write the case studies, it takes me a significant amount of time, and I'm basically going on about all of the experiences that I've had, and that's what I'm pulling from. But when ChatGPT is writing it, it's very creative, and you can say, you know, make sure that the names are diverse, make sure that we're respecting people who are coming from different countries, people who are coming from rural towns, people who are coming from big cities. And it starts pulling in everything and will spit out tons of case studies that then you just have to have the experience to go, okay, this is a good one, and this is one that I'm going to pass on, or maybe we need to refine it a little bit more.
Interesting.
Also,
Brent?
yes, actually, Dr. Fowler, you asked the exact question I was kind of thinking of. I haven't implemented it yet. Well, I haven't refined it how I've implemented it. I will teach in the fall again with it. Just knowing how a lot of the firms that I kind of work with my students, they're not really sure how to use it yet either, and they're kind of holding it pretty close to their chest. So it's more along the lines of, I think I'm going to just kind of do some activities in my class to where they engage with it. So at the very least, they haven't been they're not it's something that they've experienced once they get out into the workforce. But I think I guess that's why I was kind of interested in Provost Johnson's discussion about what they are going to now be telling students. I think I am kind of doing the very first pass in my context, a financial statement audit context, of getting them used to it. But at some point, they're going to already have those skills. And it's not until the broader firms that we work with really decide and are willing to share what they're doing that maybe we can incorporate more of that. At this point, it's, here's something I've done. I want you to put it into ChatGPT or whatever, and then decide whether or not you agree with the results. I think it's a very kind of base level right now, but I guess I'm a little stuck on what more we could do, and I'd love to hear maybe some suggestions. And I know something we brought up in the other group is the fact that even some of the tools that I would like to use is kind of behind a paywall currently because they're so new. So even some of the ones that I think could be even more like, oh, you know what, I have this great idea of how they could interact with it like it's a real person. They can't do that fully yet because I would have to seed the case in the background. And I can't let them see that case because I'm kind of seeding the errors. And so they don't have access to that yet. So I guess kind of all I'm doing right now is I think maybe exactly what Provost Johnson's talking about of using it in class just to get them used to it. At some point, they'll have to get used to it. And I'd love to hear any other thoughts on maybe where I need to be thinking more creatively about how to implement this.
And Brent, you said you were in financial statement analysis. Is that what you were teaching?
Financial statement auditing. So their first,
Auditing,
and it's,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So accounting.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, and I think, that's funny because there was an article, and I forget where I saw it today, and it was talking about how artificial intelligence might take away some of the mundane work that investment banking and other financial professionals do. And I think that from an auditing / accounting perspective, that might also be the case, right? If you have a massive amount of data and you can use some of these tools to potentially flag certain things or go through and make sure that different aspects are well documented and there are no red flags. I mean, all of these things could be really transformational in various fields. And then there's also the, kind of the next level of that is if we're using these tools to do something like auditing, how do bad actors try to confuse the tool? And so making sure that our students understand those types of things as well. So I think that there's a fair amount of practice related content that, especially in the more applied fields, that we can help our students with, because those are the places where I feel our industry stakeholders are going to be most interested in making sure our students come in prepared.
Okay, yeah, that's no, okay, that's an interesting thing so ask them to okay, learn to use a tool and then confuse the tool in a sense.
Or how would someone confuse the tool, right? And so I think, and maybe I'm just a really cynical person, but I think of your WorldComs of the world, right? If they know that their statements are going to be audited by an AI tool, they might behave differently or do things to make sure that it doesn't pick up certain aspects of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Okay. No. That's an interesting. I'll definitely think some more into that iterative process. Thank you.
And then there was this comment. I like this: the opportunity to teach more critical thinking and evaluative skills. Right. That to me is the best part, because one of the things I hear a fair amount is that when the output of some of these tools is not great, but can be refined to be better. And so that reading something and saying, hey, does this make sense? Right. And I forget where I was, but somebody said that the best way to use an AI tool is to start with something you know really well. And so that you can look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. And that might be a good prompt for students as well, right? If you are a huge fan of, Premier League soccer, you can say, tell me the top 5 Premier League teams over the last decade and why, right? And then you read this critically and you'll know, hey, wait a minute, that argument doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make I don't agree with that. Or maybe it's perfect and you're like, wow, that's a really insightful point that I didn't think of. But the more you know about something, the more ability you have to evaluate it critically. And so I think that's another opportunity for our students, is to say, go look at something that you know and ask it to do this, because there's a fair amount of belief that these tools are almost infallible. And so getting people to understand that there are limitations, there are certain things that they don't do well, might be a good exercise as well. Yes, industry advisory committees are a great place, Clint, exactly. And I would definitely say any stakeholders, former students that you have that you can reach out to ask how these tools are being used, it would be a great use of your time.
Tiana
And I-
says not
Yeah.
not among library community.
Okay, and I don't know what does that refer to, Tiana? Sorry.
As far as the infallibility of it. So we
Oh,
are
oh.
not under that illusion.
Okay. Yes, I get that.
Yeah, so this might have been covered. I came in a few minutes late, but I know right now we have access to like Microsoft Copilot as like for the entire university. I'm wondering if like we're looking at sort of like licensing other generative AI, because I like for instance, the thing that I was thinking of building off of what Brent was saying earlier is for ChatGPT, you can create custom GPTs and then you can share those and they will engage in the conversation, but you can basically give them instructions before you turn the GPT over, but the instructions are hidden. Because one thing that I've tried to do in our 0 credit hour class is actually write long form prompts that students then copy and paste into a large language model that would allow them to have like a mentoring conversation. But obviously then they can read my entire prompt. So some things that could be a surprise, maybe not be a surprise because they can read the prompt. Hopefully I'm making sense here.
No, you are. And I don't know where we are on some of the other tools. I don't think we've got anything currently in the works with any of the other large language models. I know that there's a lot of discussion about the cost of some of these things. And Deborah, do you remember what the current status is with the Google tool? I think we were looking at it, but it wasn't.
Google or the Microsoft, the Copilot. Oh shoot, I can't ever remember.
No,
the
it would
second-
be the Google. Yeah.
The Gemini?
Yes.
I do not remember what they were saying about it, but
Yeah. Okay.
I know that. Well, I don't know.
I
Yeah,
know
no,
there's
they were-
something around usage and being under 18 years old and some other concerns around that. I'm not fully aware of discussing.
Yeah, that was one of the things for Gemini, was our ability to get a private version. They restricted to 18 plus. And then there's also it's very difficult for our technology services group to demarcate faculty, staff, student, just the way that they do things. And so if we open something up, then it's almost impossible to limit it to a certain population. And so we are somewhat constrained by that.
I think the good news is that the IT folks are in conversations with, Google and Microsoft on a continuous basis. So when they feel like they have lit upon something, so to speak, I think they will go for that. Does that make sense?
Okay. Claude's good. Okay. I've not used that one. Yes, students do have access to Copilot.
Dr. Johnson, I'll ask a question. So the last few minutes, I think, was an exercise of just how complex and rapid this is across the institution, right? Involving IT and, you know, governance and all, a lot of administrators and faculty. So question is, where and how can faculty lead in some of these areas? Or, you know, where are opportunities for faculty to kind of speak into and give input in the direction through, you know, just kind of where A&M is rolling things out?
Right. I think that the best place to start is your unit, so your college or school. And I know that some units have had these generative AI workshops or discussion groups. And so if your unit hasn't had that, maybe ask your department head what the plan is and if they're going to do something like that, because it's a much more powerful thing to recommend when it comes from the faculty, as opposed to if the dean just decides we're going to do this, or if somebody else says, hey, you have to do this. If the faculty are saying, hey, we'd like to have a discussion about what our strategy is as a college or school in generative AI, or we'd like to really think about what our direction will be in this area, I think that's very helpful. So if your department head can push that on your behalf, that's a great place to go.
One thing back to the question about the students, I'm not sure all the students recognize that they need to go through Microsoft 365 to be able to access it. Or I think I have that right.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So they might be trying a way that doesn't allow them to get in. Yeah, Justin confirmed.
Do we have any instructions that maybe we could also give to make sure? Because I think we're just trying to make sure they get to the protected one, correct? Do we have any access to instructions or something on that? No? Okay.
That's a good question.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there was an email that was sent out. I don't know if it had instructions.
But that's something that we could certainly, you know, locate
Yes.
and then make sure we get it out to all the faculty. That's a really good idea, Brent.
Yeah, I think that could be a help, because even when I've been switching between, I know that I've gotten, making sure to get to the private one is a little odd, but I know we just want to make sure that they have that option.
One of the thing about some of the conversations earlier of what faculty, what you're trying to do and, you know, wanting to try it again before you optimize it and everything. I'm concerned that if you're not trying it right now, if you're not, you know, experimenting with it a little yourself, where are you going to be next year when the students have, you know, been playing with it a little bit, or they're expecting it, or some faculty are using it and some are not. It's just kind of going to get a little more complicated, I think.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Fowler, because that's something I was also thinking. Faculty members, they have like in kind of a spectrum when it comes to academic integrity and then using AI. And some of the faculty members, they want to use AI, and some of the faculty members are totally against it. So in that spectrum, where should we stand? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's completely contextual to the class and the faculty member. I would just say that completely against using it is going to be a little hard to enforce unless you go back to the blue books and start having people writing essays in class. You know, that's the only good way I can think of enforcing that type of thing. But you know, it comes back to trusting our faculty colleagues to do what they think is best to ensure that our students are getting the educational outcomes that they deem appropriate. And so if somebody says that we can't use artificial intelligence in my class because that's just not going to be okay, I think that that's probably something I'll defer to them on. I don't think that that would be a decent strategy if, you know, 90+% of our faculty adopted it, but in a limited number, it might possibly be very important and very appropriate.
Check out what Tiana just put into the chat, which is the link to the
Oh,
help
okay.
desk. That looks like it could potentially be really valuable and something that we could remind faculty that it's there. Like you said, we all need to read through it and make sure it's not confusing in some way.
May I ask, yes, and Tiana, thank you very much. This is very helpful. So I also deal with the writing portion. I guess it's becoming a little, what does that mean now? So we're a writing class, we have to do so much writing. Yeah, I'm trying to design prompts that are difficult to just GPT necessarily, but is that, I guess two questions there. Is that a useful exercise for me, or I think it's just creating more confusion for the students? Or secondly, have we had any discussion on what exactly the W class is now required, given that, okay, we have a very, very powerful tool to help us with? I don't know, just some general thoughts on that.
Right. And so I think that having prompts that aren't easily answered by the tool is definitely part of it, right? And so anything you can do to make sure that your students don't have an easy out. And I go back to this idea that, that's part of teaching now, and that should be part of your update to your class. If you have a multiple choice assessment that can easily be dumped into a GPT and all the answers are spit out in 2 minutes, then maybe you should rethink that aspect of it, or how you're delivering it. If you have a writing prompt that is very, and the idea of like summarize this article is the one that comes to my mind very quickly. That's something that these tools can do pretty well, right? And so that might not be how you want to assess students' writings. But if you have something that requires a certain level of understanding about them, or a certain amount of personal exposition, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to just dump that, and for you not to at least question the validity of their answer. And so I think that that's a great way to go about it. And then the other thing is, maybe you just lean into it and say, okay, use this prompt to get output from the tool, and then show me the output that you got from the tool, but also show me how you would improve it. And so that you can see their writing and their understanding of what they take from this tool and turn into something that's their own.
I absolutely, and I think that's kind of the approach that I was trying to somewhat take, but then it's also, is that, the 15 pages required, you don't want to fall afoul of any sort of accreditation stuff that comes, right? I guess that's kind of my,
Yes.
have we thought of
Yes.
any defense to that, or any pushback on that?
Right. I have found that the CW course committee is pretty good about understanding the needs of the faculty, and being somewhat accommodating. I have not put a new course, or I've not put a reaccreditation of a C or W course through in a few years. But I think it's still the same group of people and the same mentality. So I would hope that if you said, this is what we're doing and this is how it's being done, that they would accept that. But the best thing to do is to ask them. And I'm blanking on the person's name that is in charge of that now. The gentleman from English that took over one of Valerie Ballister's jobs. But, sending a note to him and saying, this is what I'm thinking about, but I want to make sure that it doesn't run afoul of the W course requirements, and he should be able to get back to you and let you know.
Great, thank you.
Any other question or comment?
I'm reading the comment in the chat. Right. And I was at a a symposium for the Engineering Accreditation Agency last week or the week before last week. And this was a question that came up because their theme this year was AI. And one person basically asked, what happens to the creativity cycle if everybody's just using these tools to get a certain way down the road, right? The scariest thing for anyone who's ever written anything is the blank page, right? That blinking cursor surrounded by a sea of white. And if I can use one of these tools to kind of get me to 3 pages and I just have to start editing, then that's a much different practice than if I have to like start composing. And so I don't know is the short answer to the question, what it's going to mean to write in the next decade, and what it's going to mean to write in industry. I will say to some extent, my read is that industry is not as concerned about some of these aspects of the creativity as they are the outcome, right? And so as long as you're not divulging intellectual property, as long as you're not engaging in something that would be viewed as intellectually dishonest, using these tools to put together a memo quickly is viewed as efficiency, which is great.
I think Dr. Matt McKinney.
Matt McKinney, thank
Yes,
you.
Okay,
Yes.
that's dropped in the chat for anyone.
Right. I totally agree, Kelly. It understanding the process, and we as educators we should have hopefully been focused on the process the whole time, but now process becomes even more important than product because you never know about the provenance of the product.
Michael, we're about at time. Do you have any last minute tidbits you want to pass
Oh.
along to them?
Play with it, be open, and discuss things with your students. Just have a conversation, show them that you're aware of the tools, show them that you what's the importance of learning, and why, if they use these tools in a way that inhibits their learning, that it's a detriment to their education and probably their own future. So I would say that would be my kind of closing remark.